Camping under the stars can be magical, but what happens when the beauty of the wilderness turns into a nightmare? From strange noises in the woods to chilling encounters with the unexplained, these real-life camping stories will make you think twice before venturing into the wild again. Brace yourself for tales of mystery, terror, and the unthinkable, because sometimes the scariest things are waiting just outside your tent. Alex Diarzio PS went camping in the Allegheny National Forest with some friends, and one night they were sitting around the fire when someone, or something, started throwing rocks at their tent from somewhere in the darkness. Initially, they thought it was a group of pranksters from a neighboring camp. When they took a look around the camp, there was no sign of anyone but them. A few hours later, they heard a piercing scream. The two spent the rest of the night unsettled, but never discovered what had happened. Koshgeo was camping in the high Arctic when late at night, from inside their tent, they heard what sounded like pebbles rolling down the side of a nearby slope. Their first thought was it had to be a polar bear. They got up to look outside the tent and saw nothing. Somewhat confused but not too worried, they fell back asleep. An hour or so later, they woke to the sound of pebbles falling again. After a few nights of this eerie noise, they finally discovered what was going on. When the sunlight hit the frozen side of the slope, it loosened the pebbles that had been solidified by the ice. Then, the pebbles would slowly start falling, coming in showers. But then, the writer began to worry that the next time they heard pebbles, it would actually be a polar bear, and they would have dismissed the pebbles as a natural phenomenon. Naturally, they didn't get a good night's sleep until they moved camp. Border Trilogy is no stranger when it comes to camping, but when he and his wife wandered off the trail while backpacking in Maine, they had a rather strange encounter. They had prepared to be on the trail for 10 days, and so far hadn't seen another person since first hitting the trail. The couple had hoped not to see anyone else on their trip, so this was perfect. Normally, they just sleep under the stars. One night, because it was drizzling, they set up their little tent and climbed inside for the night. Around sunrise the next morning, he crawled from their tent to see a man standing about 30 feet from them, staring. The Reddit user greeted them, but without saying a word, the man turned and disappeared into the woods. The couple were out there for another few days and kept waiting to run into the man again, but never did. While camping in the Manistee National Forest in northern Michigan, Beer Hunter 420 saw something they'll never be able to forget. That year, they decided to try a new spot on the river that had better access for fishing and kayaking. They were miles from the nearest town, so the odds of running into anyone else were slim. On their first day, they set up their tents and spent the afternoon by the river before returning to camp in the evening. They were sitting around their fire when they noticed another massive fire glowing through the trees about 300 yards away. Then the chanting began. When the Reddit user got a closer look, they realized it was actually a burning cross. 5 minutes into the chanting, gunfire started. The Reddit writer guessed there were at least 10 different guns going off, followed by yells about white power. Based on the level of the noise, they thought there had to have been at least 20 people. They packed up what they could carry and got out of that camp as quickly as they could. One macabre cat went camping at a summer program when he was 16. When he went to bed one night, the group stayed awake, chatting in their tent, when they suddenly started to hear heavy breathing nearby. He described the noise sounding like someone had just been sprinting and stopped right outside their tent. Trying to stay calm, he ignores it and keeps chatting. Then they heard, "Please help me." Everyone in the tent went silent. They heard the questions again. At this point, they were all freaked out. Then one of the braver kids turned on a flashlight and opened the inner flap to see out. They saw a pair of bare, scabbed and pale legs standing there. It seemed as though the guy had been walking nude through the woods for a while. The man asked for help again, and the boy who opened the tent told the man to keep walking down the trail and he should find a ranger soon. The man responded, "No. No rangers. They keep me here." One of the camp chaperones came out and asked the man a series of questions. The old man didn't answer. Instead, he started sobbing and ran into the woods. A few years ago, Tyzek went on a mission trip to Kenya and was spending a few days camping in the bush. They remember that one night the moon was exceptionally bright, making it easy to see what was happening outside their tent. They woke in the middle of the night after hearing quiet feet shuffling through the dirt nearby. They opened their eyes and saw the silhouette of a person moving around their tent. The silhouette was utterly terrifying, thanks to a large, strange headdress. After getting barely any sleep that night, they asked their team leader about the person. They said it was probably a witch doctor passing by in the night. Truven was camping in Pololu Valley on the Big Island of Hawaii when they discovered two massive centipedes in their tent. They decided to pack up and leave at about 3 in the morning. When they reached the top of the valley, they paused to take a break and look out across the coastline. That was when they saw 15 to 20 flickering torchlights a few valleys over. Now, those valleys are for experienced hikers only, and it would be very strange for that many to be out at this time of night. The only other solution pointed to the Hawaiian Night Marchers, a piece of local lore that describes the ghosts of Hawaiian warriors marching around the miles in the dead of night. This Reddit user didn't believe in the stories before, but what kind of hikers would be using torches instead of headlamps? Pillow Pants 101 was in Canada climbing with a friend, and they were on their way back to their car with their dog walking between them on a leash. Suddenly, the dog lurched into his friend, causing him to stumble. The writer turned around and saw a full-grown mountain lion standing about 2 feet behind them. It had just tried to pull the dog off its leash and was now sitting back on its haunches, hissing. The Reddit user froze, but their friend turned around and started running. They yelled for their friend to stop. Running would make the mountain lion want to chase him. Their friend stopped, then turned and ran directly at the cat, screaming and waving his arms. The cat jumped into the woods, away from sight. The two started walking faster down the trail, but when they turned around, the mountain lion was right behind them, and even closer this time than before. The friend started throwing rocks. One of the rocks landed and rolled past the lion. The animal chased it down the trail until it disappeared. During the last mile or so back to camp, the two kept checking over their shoulder, but the mountain lion never returned. After they were off the trail, they heard about a couple of hikers and their dog, who had apparently encountered the same mountain lion. This time, the lion had been successful in getting the dog off the leash. Eventually, the Canadian Mounties hunted it down and killed it. What's Really Going On and their husband were camping in the Everglades in Florida. On the first night, they had the entire island to themselves. They set up camp on the beach, and the view of the wide-open Gulf of Mexico was spectacular. The two settled into their tent and fell asleep to the sound of gentle waves hitting the beach. But around 2 in the morning, the Reddit writer woke and heard nothing. They went out and shone their flashlight out to where the water should have been, but it wasn't there. The beach where the couple had just been fishing a few hours before extended beyond the reach of their flashlight beam. They ventured out, but still saw no ocean. They went back into the tent and remembered that right before a tsunami hits, the water recedes. Convinced there was a tsunami approaching, they were terrified. Eventually, the sound of the water returned, and the writer couldn't describe the intense relief they felt. When Clockwork 2112 was a kid, they went hiking along a coastal national forest with their friend and his dad. They dropped into an overgrown side of the main trail and noticed an awful stench that they assumed was a dead animal. They then spotted a cardboard sign leaning against a pile of trash at the base of a tree. The sign read, "Come and find me," with an arrow pointing further down the overgrown trail. The smell had gotten worse the closer they got to the sign. They went back up to the main trail and told their friend and his dad what they'd seen. When they got back to town, the dad called the local sheriff. They never found out what was down the overgrown trail, but they can't help but imagine that it was a corpse or maybe a bunch of dead animals. And there you have it. Terrifying camping tales that prove the wilderness holds more than just natural beauty. It hides secrets, mysteries, and fears that linger long after the campfire has gone out. If you're still brave enough to go camping after this, remember, stay alert, trust your instincts, and maybe, just maybe, keep the lights on all night. Share your thoughts or your own creepy stories in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more bone-chilling adventures.